Corruption versus the lower class. Why do the rich keep getting richer while the poor struggle just to survive? Every year, over $1 trillion is lost to corruption globally, according to the World Bank. This growing figure isn't just a number, but a reason for millions of stolen futures, broken systems, and shattered lives. For many people, especially in countries with dominant corruption like India, South Sudan, and Venezuela, this isn't some distant issue. It's a reality that is embedded in their everyday lives. Corruption robs the lower class, not just of money, but of opportunities, dignity, and hope. My central message is this. Corruption is a global injustice that disproportionately hurts the unprivileged and must be addressed through accountability, transparency, and collective action. For example, in 2013 in Malawi, the CashGate scandal exposed how government officials embezzled millions meant for public services like healthcare and education. Many families like Esther's, an agricultural laborer and mother of three, were barely surviving, while corrupt politicians, relaxed in their luxury homes, never once burdened by the fear of how they'd feed their children. Esther counted every coin to afford school books and meals. Despite her hard work, her children had no access to basic resources because of the funds meant to support them were used to fill the pockets of their government. This isn't just a theft, it's a betrayal by their own country. Corruption steals more than money, it steals futures. Consider Thailand, when a national fund was created to help low-income HIV/AIDS patients across all 76 provinces. Investigation later found that in 49 of these provinces, local officials had misused the funds. Out of $3.2 million, about 85% was stolen. These weren't just numbers, they were life-saving medicine denied for marginalized communities. In Haiti, after the devastating 2010 earthquake, the American Red Cross raised nearly $500 million for relief efforts, but later investigation identified that only 6 permanent homes were built after the money was raised. 6 homes. Meanwhile, entire neighborhoods lived in tents, children died of preventable disease, and schools were never rebuilt. In these examples, corruption shows its true face as a silent killer of progress and the enemy of human potential. In many parts of the world, corruption is so deeply rooted that even accessing basic services is unavailable without a certain price. In countries like India, Haiti, and Nigeria, people often need to bribe officials just to get documents, permits, or even emergency care. Families are forced to pay extra for food rations, clean water, or school seats, services that are supposed to be already provided, not privileges. Imagine being sick and having to pay a bribe to get treated at a public hospital, or being denied a job because someone else paid more money than you could. Corruption creates a shadow economy where only those with powerful connections or bribes can survive, and everyone else is left behind. Though I haven't experienced this directly, hearing stories from my family, friends, or reading global newspapers has opened my eyes. It's not just an issue in third world countries. Corruption can exist anywhere in the world. It may look different, less dramatic, but the consequences are equally damaging. When politicians misuse funds to plan projects or award contracts based on favors, at the end the poor pay the price. Fewer jobs, less healthcare, crumbling schools. Corruption also weakens public trust when people lose faith in their leaders, their government, and even in each other. Society begins to fall apart. Protest rates increase, crime rises, migration increases. Those who speak up against corruption are often silenced, jailed, or called troublemakers, but people are simply desperate for fairness and justice. The Euromaidan protests in Ukraine were not just about politics, they were a fight for basic human dignity. When billions were stolen and healthcare was collapsed, when pensions were so low that the elderly couldn't even afford half a month of living expenses despite minimizing them, the people had had enough. Ordinary Ukrainians led a 3-month-long protest during the coldest winter month. Despite facing bullets, tear gas, and freezing temperatures, they stood their ground, demanding accountability and fairness from the government that was heavily corrupt. This movement shows how deeply corruption can wound a nation, pushing its citizens to act so rebellious not for power but simply to defend their dignity and the basic rights they were denied. Economically, corruption drains national wealth and sabotages growth. Investors cut their funding budgets, shrink, and innovation stays in the same place. The World Economic Forum states that corruption adds up to 10% to the cost of doing business globally. For low-income nations, this is a tragedy. It means fewer jobs and higher prices. The unprivileged are hit the hardest. They must pay bribes just to get what the wealthy take for granted, like clean water, education, or a safe place to live. Some people argue that corruption is just how things work, or is too complex to manage. Others say that bribes are simply part of the country's culture, but there's the problem. Just because something is common doesn't make it right. Accepting corruption as a normal allows it to expand. Saying everyone does it ignores the millions of suffering because of it. Corruption is not a culture, it's a crime, and those who say otherwise have likely never been denied a hospital bed, a school desk, or government services because they couldn't afford a bribe. To those who are trying to normalize it, I say that change has happened before and it can happen again. Countries like Georgia and Rwanda have made major actions in reducing corruption through strict enforcement, transparency laws, and public oversight. Even mobile apps now allow citizens to report bribes anonymously. Open data initiatives let the public track government expanding. When people demand change and systems support them, corruption can be exposed. Corruption is like a thief that was never caught. It's rarely spoken about. However, it manages to spark nearly every global crisis like hunger, malnutrition, poor healthcare, failing schools. Governments claim they lack resources, but actually, the resources are misused. Every country generates revenue through taxes, trade, and aid. The problem isn't the lack of money, it's where that money goes. Corruption redirects finances from hospitals, clean water, schools, to luxury cars, private jets, or offshore accounts. This must be brought to an end. We must speak up. We must educate ourselves and others. We must refuse to participate in bribery, even when it seems tempting. We must demand accountability and support leaders who show integrity. Fighting corruption isn't only about laws or punishments, it's about values. It's about believing that every person deserves fairness and every child deserves a future not to be stolen by greed. If corruption is a disease, then accountability is its cure, and it must be available to everyone, especially the lower class people. We owe it to them and to ourselves to fight back. Every protest, every report, every act of honesty is a step closer to the well-being of all. Let's not be silent and instead speak up. Let's be the generation that says no more to corruption. My last wish is for you to imagine a world where government funds go where they're supposed to, where aid builds homes, not bank accounts, where no child dies because of someone stole their medicine. The reality is possible, but only if we act. Thank you.